Everybody, welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. I'm here with Katie Halper from the Katie Halper Show. Hi, Katie.
Hi, Jimmy.
Good to see you. Everybody check out her podcast. We'll put a link underneath. Right now, we're going to talk about Bernie Sanders made a big speech yesterday about Yemen, and I want to let you know what's happening in Yemen, okay? So first of all, this is from The Intercept, right? And just to let you know what's happening there, the U.S. military currently provides vital support to the Saudi-led incursion in Yemen. Saudi Arabia began its bombing campaign in March 2015, aiming to restore Yemen's former Saudi-backed president, Abdul Rabbu Mansour Hadi, to power. So Saudi Arabia wants to overthrow the government in Yemen. And the United States is like, cool, we'll sell you the arms to do it. You go bomb the poorest people in the world. We'll help you all the way around. And then we'll pretend like we're the good guys. What they're doing in Yemen is called siege warfare. Now, I don't know if you know what that is. That's a war crime. That's a war crime. They just literally prosecuted someone in the international court. Just got him convicted on a war crime for doing siege warfare. That's what we're doing in Yemen. And what that means, what siege warfare is, it comes from medieval times, is you block everything off that the people need to live. All supplies, water, anything you can. That's called siege warfare. And that's a war crime. And we're heavily participating in it in Yemen. One of the poorest countries in the world, and we're killing people left and right. So that's what's happening. And we're all doing it at the behest of Saudi Arabia. Now, why are we friends with Saudi Arabia? And why are we friends with other countries that have more of a democracy? Like Saudi Arabia is completely authoritarian, theocracy. They behead people still in the streets, all that stuff. They're unbelievably oppressive to women. Why are we friends with them? Petrodollar, that's why we're friends with them. Because in the 70s, Nixon went off the gold standard, and he got Saudi Arabia to promise to monetize all purchases of oil in U.S. dollars. That's called the petrodollar. So that's what props up our dollar, our economy, the whole thing. And then we promise Saudi Arabia, we'll do all your bidding for war anywhere you want us to do. And that's what this is. So that's what this is. You know, Saudi Arabia offered to pay for us to invade Syria. They offered to pay for it all. If you invade Syria, that's what they did. Okay, so there's a little bit more to that. Hadi was deposed in 2014 by a Zaidi Shiite rebel group commonly known as the Houthis. So there you go, deposed. The U.S. has supported the campaign for almost 3 years, providing targeting intelligence, weapons, and mid-air refueling support for Saudi warplanes. But neither the Obama administration nor the Trump administration has publicly outlined the legal basis for the U.S. role in the conflict. So what they keep using is this, what they gave George Bush after 9/11 was called the Defense Authorization. What is it called, Ron? Defense Authorization for Military Action. Yes, that's it. And so what that did was give the president the ability to go fight Al-Qaeda and terrorism anywhere he saw fit. So now all you have to do is say, oh, well, there's ISIS in Yemen. So there's ISIS in Syria. Oh, there's ISIS there. That's all you have to do. And now we can have a war for as long as you want. Some people have pushed back against it. Like in September, Ro Khanna, Tom Massey, Mark Pocan, Walter Jones. Those are all people in Congress. They introduced a similar war powers resolution to try to force a vote on U.S. support for the war in Yemen. So what they're trying to do is take control back of declaring war to the Congress, right? That's what the founding fathers wanted it to be. That's where it should be. It should be in the body that's closest to the people. So senior members of both parties, including Representative Steny Hoyer and the Democratic Minority Whip, initially opposed that effort. So the Democrats are, again, pro-war. We have two parties, pro-management, pro-war. That's how you get Trump. That measure also met with stiff resistance from the Saudi government, which maintains one of the largest lobbying operations in Washington. Brownstein Hyatt Farber Schreck, a lobbying firm initially hired by the Saudi government. So you want to know who's influencing our government? Is it the Russians or is it the Saudis?
The Saudis are coming.
The Saudis are coming. The Saudis are coming. So they have hired this PR firm, this lobbying firm, and they're paying them $100,000 a month retainer to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen. Those resolutions that Ro Khanna wanted to impose, they're lobbying against our own government. Elizabeth Gore, a former senior Democratic staffer now works at that lobbying group, Brownstein. She's the policy director on the Saudi account, and she corresponded with The Intercept by email on November 13th. She corresponded by email on November 13th with representatives from offices of Hoyer and Representative Elliot Engel, the ranking members of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, to discuss the Ro Khanna resolution. So there you go. So there's a former Democratic staffer working for Saudi Arabia, getting paid handsomely to now lobby our government on behalf of Saudi Arabia to do more war. Isn't that awesome? Another Brownstein Hyatt lobbyist, Zachary S. Pfister, corresponded on the same day with the office of Representative Seth Moulton of Democrat of Massachusetts to discuss the resolution. So there they are. They're lobbying, influencing our legislators. But get this, several lawmakers last year tried to use the National Defense Authorization Act. That's what I told you about. That's what gives the president the power to do war unilaterally whenever he feels like it without the authorization from Congress. So the National Defense Authorization Act, which sets the annual Defense Department budget to bring a halt to the war. In the House, Representative Rick Nolan, Democrat, Minnesota, and Warren Davidson, Representative of Ohio, offered amendments to the NDAA to influence the war on Yemen. So the Nolan amendments would have prohibited the deployment of U.S. troops in the conflict, and the Davidson amendment would have blocked U.S. involvement, not authorized by the 2001 Authorization for Use of Military Force. Do they call that UMF? That's what I call it in my head, UMF. The Authorization for Use of Military Force, that's what I call it in my head, UMF. The amendments passed, but were later stripped out of the conference committee. Why? Why were they stripped out? So they did. They passed these. So our government says, yeah, let's go ahead and rein in our Yemen and rein in the powers of the... Alfred Motor, a prominent Democratic lobbyist with Brownstein Hyatt and a former fundraiser for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign, disclosed that he helped Saudi Arabia influence the NDAA amendments. Isn't that awesome? So you got Democrats working with foreign governments to get us to do more war. Other Saudi lobbyists stepped in as well. Howard Buck McKeon, a former senior GOP representative who retired from Congress to open his own lobbying shop, the McKeon Group, is also paid by the Saudi government to help maintain political support for the war in Yemen. Isn't that awesome? Imagine if they were paid by Russia to maintain support for, I don't know, Assad in Syria. Imagine that. Isn't that awesome? McKeon and his lobbying firm helped his Saudi clients influence the NDAA amendments to Yemen, as well as the Khanna resolution. McKeon notably also lobbied lawmakers to support the Trump administration's decision to sell so-called precision-guided munitions, or PGMs, to Saudi Arabia. So there you go. There it is. You want a foreign government influencing our There it is. So, but no one's talking about that, right? No one says anything about it. Isn't that awesome that no one says anything about that?
Yeah, and they're also the most anti-democratic. I mean, if people have a problem with Putin and Russia...
They actually have elections.
Yeah, this is like, I mean, as you said, theocracy, totally repressive, brutal, misogynist, very authoritarian, and, brutal. Theocracy. That's what the government there is.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's no doubt.
And also, I think that it's funny. I think that the U.S., it's like we only want to support like one siege at a time. So we're already supporting Israel and Gaza. So maybe we don't want to spread ourselves too thin, right? We need to be committed. We should just stick to one.
To one siege?
Yeah. One siege at a time, like that.
Because we are doing it is borderline siege warfare in Gaza, right? I mean that is well, the people have described it as an open air prison.
Yeah. Norm Finkelstein does a lot. It's a book that just came out about this.
Mm-hmm.
But what's interesting is Israel and Saudi Arabia, they're really different, obviously, but they're both supported by the United States. It's just that in the case of Israel, we always brag about that.
Yeah.
In Saudi Arabia, we try to keep it under the table.
Right.
But there are two governments that, I mean, it's just like a total ashanda, if you will, the little Yiddish word for shame. But it is. It's a shame that we empower either of those governments. They do horrible things.
And, President Trump, still sounds President Trump, they say he's a Putin puppet. He's Russia. He's got business dealings in Russia, and he owes money and money. He opened up 8 businesses in Saudi Arabia during the campaign.
Right, but no one cares. Yeah,
and no one gives a shit, right? Because it doesn't fit into Hillary Clinton's narrative that the Russians stole the election.
Right.
Bernie Sanders talked about this yesterday. He gave a speech because they are trying to rein this in, our war in Yemen. They're trying to take away the power of the president to do war unilaterally like they've been doing since 9/11. And here's what he had to say about it.
And it goes without saying that every armed conflict that the United States of America is engaged in must be consistent with the Constitution of the United States and be lawful. Let us make no mistake about it. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution states in no uncertain terms that Congress shall have power to declare war. Congress shall have power to declare war. The Founding Fathers gave the power to declare war to Congress, the branch most accountable to the people. For far too long, Congress, under Democratic and Republican administrations, has abdicated its constitutional role in authorizing war. The time is long overdue for Congress to reassert its constitutional authority. And that is what Senators Lee, Senator Murphy, and I are doing with this privileged resolution that we are introducing. Many Americans are unaware that the people of Yemen are suffering today in a devastating civil war with Saudi Arabia and their allies on one side and Houthi rebels on the other. In November of this year, the United Nations Emergency Relief Coordinator said that Yemen was on the brink of, quote, the largest famine the world has seen for many decades, end quote. So far, at least 10,000 civilians have died and over 40,000 have been wounded in the war, and 3 million people have been displaced. Many Americans are also not aware that U.S. forces have been actively involved in support of the Saudis in this war, providing intelligence and aerial refueling of planes whose bombs have killed thousands of people and made this crisis far worse. We believe that as Congress has not declared war or authorized military force in this conflict, the United States' involvement in Yemen is unconstitutional and unauthorized, and U.S. military support of the Saudi coalition must end. Without congressional authorization, our engagement in this war should be restricted to providing desperately needed humanitarian aid and diplomatic efforts to resolve it. That is why today, Senator Lee and I and Senator Murphy are introducing a joint resolution pursuant to the 1973 War Powers Resolution calling for an end to U.S. support for the Saudi war in Yemen. The War Powers Resolution defines the introduction of U.S. armed forces to include, quote, the assignment of members of such armed forces to command, coordinate, participate in the movement of, or accompany the regular or irregular forces of any foreign country of government when such military forces are engaged or there exists an imminent threat that such forces will become engaged in hostilities, end of quote. Assisting with targeting intelligence and refueling airplanes as they bomb these targets clearly meets this definition. This is not a partisan issue. Support for the Saudi intervention in Yemen began under a Democratic president and has continued under a Republican president. Senator Lee is a conservative Republican. I am a progressive independent who caucuses with the Democrats. In November of last year, the House of Representatives, with a strong bipartisan vote, voted overwhelmingly for a non-binding resolution stating that U.S. involvement in the Yemen civil war is unauthorized. Only 30 members of the House voted against that resolution, and that is what we are saying today. We are in agreement with the vast majority of the Democrats and Republicans in the House.
So this is Pop. So by the way, that was great. That was great by Bernie. Would you have anything to say? That was
Bernie.
great. It's
Yeah,
good to see
great.
Bernie get back on track with the foreign
nice
policy,
to see
isn't
Bernie.
it?
Yes,
Because he's been pushed.
always been, he gets a lot. He doesn't get a lot of credit for his foreign policy stances. People love during the primary. One of the big talking points was like he doesn't know what he's doing. He's not experienced, as opposed to Hillary Clinton, who's experienced in doing the wrong thing. So I'll take that first of all.
Yes.
But he's always managed to be on the right side of things throughout history, and the guy's been around for a while, and he's I guess he approved the Libya thing, not with a lot of enthusiasm. I don't think most people knew what was going on there. But he was on the right side of the Iran-Contra scandal, as in he didn't want to support torturers and violate, lie to Congress. Even though Joanne Reed pointed out that he thought it would have been made him vulnerable, the fact that he had supported the Sandinistas, as if supporting the Contras would have been a better thing.
Right.
And, he was against the war in Iraq, and he was great. He didn't condone and help kind of facilitate ex post facto a coup in Honduras. I think people underestimate how good he is on foreign policy issues. And this is an example. There's 3 people who introduced this, right?
And he's one of them.
And he's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to see him do that. We talked about Ro Khanna and a bunch of other people only 30 people voted against it in the Congress. So, in the House. So,
but you know what? He's a Russian spy, so I can't trust him.
Yeah, I know.
So he wastes his credit.
Do you ever think we'll be able to rein in the power of the president to do? So what it does is, the president can respond to a threat for 60 days, and then after 60 days, that's it. You got to get congressional approval if you want to keep going. Right. And so that's what they're trying to introduce here. That's what they're trying to hold the president's feet to the fire on. Right. And that's what they're trying to make happen. But right now we've been in Afghanistan for 17 years.
Don't regret a minute of it.
17 years, 3 more years that war gets a gold watch.
Yeah, exactly.
So I just want to show that to you so you know what's happening in Yemen. You know we're a part of it. So when someone says we're in Syria to help people or in Libya to help people, we're never, ever, our military is never, ever anywhere to help anyone ever.
That's a really important takeaway. Seriously, I don't know how people still believe it. I do know how people still believe it. Nationalism is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
And it's very powerful, and we have a lot of PR people working on this. But, we haven't really fought on the right side of a war since World War II. And when people say, by the way, I can't believe this, when people say that the Russia stuff, which is so overblown, and Max Blumenthal came on my show the other day and said something like, this big Dem, I can't remember who it is, had claimed that Russia spent most of its money targeting swing states, purple states.
Yeah.
And he said, they actually only spent $1,000 in Michigan and Wisconsin, key swing states, which may have been $1,000 more than Hillary spent because she ran the worst campaign I've ever witnessed. But when they say this is the next Pearl Harbor, they don't realize what they're announcing is a desire to fight World War III.
Yes.
Because World War II was the last war that we fought for the right reasons. It also only could happen after Pearl Harbor. FDR didn't really have the support to have the U.S. enter the war until that happened.
Right.
So while that was a good war, this clearly would not be. We don't even know what we're fighting in Russia, right? But it's really important because, Vietnam, wrong. Korea, wrong. Afghanistan, some libs think Afghanistan was okay, so let's give that to them, even though they're wrong.
No, wrong.
But Iraq, wrong, right? Yeah, of course it's wrong.
Afghanistan, total wrong.
No, and the libs like to say that the first Gulf War was the good one. No, that was a bad one, too.
That was also
They've all been
stupid.
bad. So if you honestly think that the U.S. is fighting out of a commitment to democracy, that is just, you're ignoring history and you're ignoring facts. You can't look at the U.S. supporting Saudi Arabia and for a second, this isn't complicated. It's like, I don't know, the Saudis, the Yemenis,
our government via the CIA has tried to topple any democracies in the Middle East and
Latin America
and put in strong right wingers, strongmen. And why? Because they're easier to control. Because you know what they're going to do. Democracy's messy, and they might want to take the oil for themselves.
Right. Yeah,
you can't have that. And you can't have democracy breaking up. There might be socialism, and then people would know socialism works.
Look at Henry Kissinger. He should be persona non grata. He should be not allowed to leave his apartment. He should be living underground somewhere in a bunker.
Right.
But no, he's a statesman. He's honored. He's trotted out. His opinion matters, and not in the way that it's like Kissinger said X, so let's definitely do Y. No, it's Kissinger said X, so let's do X.
Yeah.
This is a guy who oversaw, who helped prolong the war in Vietnam. This is a guy
come on.
who helped
Three or
with
four
whatevs.
Asian
No big
mil-
deal.
3 or
No
4
big deal,
million
yeah.
Asians dead.
Cambodia, secret bomb in Cambodia.
That's the best kind of bombing
Allende.
secret.
It is true. Yeah, it's nice to. You don't want to. Why add to their suffering? They're
Yeah.
going to be killed. You might as well
You
not
want-
give them the
you wanna
anxiety
rub their nose in it,
exactly
right?
beforehand. The coup in Chile. You know, this guy's he's a Renaissance man. That's the cool thing about all these people is that it really makes you realize how much bipartisan cooperation there is, right? Like when
For
we're
war.
talking, for war.
Yeah.
You know?
2 war parties.
Yeah.
Which is why a lot of right-wingers voted for Trump because he said he was an anti-interventionist. Turns out he's not. They got him.
Wait, you mean right wingers voted for
Trump.
because he was
A
anti-intervention?
lot of people said that they voted for Trump because he was an anti-interventionist.
Okay.
That that's what they liked about
Yeah.
him. That he did, and he said it over and over,
Right.
like it was stupid that we're in the Middle
Yeah,
East and
right.
we should get out of there. And whoa, it's appealing to hear someone say that as opposed to Hillary Clinton. We came, we saw, he died.
Right. Ha,
you know?
ha, ha.
Ha ha ha. So please, I wanted to show you that Bernie's back on track with the
Bernie's
foreign
back,
policy.
yeah.
So that's nice
Don't
to see.
talk about Russia, Bernie.
Don't
Just
talk about- stop
pivot
talk-
back to the issues. You know Americans don't care. This is the other thing about Russia. Nobody who doesn't. The people who care about Russia are the people who already hate Trump, already got out of the House to vote, and the handful of people who love Putin, apparently. But the people who don't care about Russia stuff are the people who didn't leave their houses to vote because they weren't motivated
Right.
enough, or the people who went from Obama to Trump. Those are the people who, not your dinner party, not the people who you see at
Right.
your yoga class. Those people were already with you.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how indignant they are. All that proves is that you don't
Yes.
see anyone who's not in your very small circle. But they have this delusion of cosmopolitanism, this delusion of worldliness, and they think that they have their finger on the pulse of the world and things are really changing. No, this is it now. This is it. This Russia stuff. Literally no one cares about it.
No one. We make that point over and over.
Right.
Every time I have a politician on, I'm saying, how many people are talking about Russia in your district?
Yeah.
No one is ever talking about Russia. No one. People are talking about everything that we think you're talking about. Living wage,
Yeah.
single payer health care. How are we going to pay for college? How am I going to afford that operation? My pharmaceuticals are through the roof. But my job sucks. I got to have 3 of them.
Yeah.
That's what people are talking about. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this segment. We'll see you March 26th. We added a second show in Austin and March 30th in Burbank, California. Those are our next 2 live shows. We'd love to see you there. It's a great way to help support the show. Come to a live show, become a patron. We give you 3 hours of bonus content a week. Plus, make sure you're subscribed. That's the important thing. You got to make sure you're subscribed because they're unsubscribing people. That's how they're killing independent news on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe and click that bell so you get a notification when we drop a video. Thanks for your support.